Okay, so we're going to take some questions from some of in the chat. So if you are joining us, so please post your questions. There were a couple of last time. One of the questions from the chat before our stream got cut last time was, what is the purpose of atheism? So it's a good question. I was talking to, obviously, some of the guys when we didn't realize that the conversation had fallen off. Okay, so hopefully we're getting people to join us now again. There we go. I agree with the old DOS Muslims are using. So one of the questions that was posted in the chat is, what is the purpose of life for atheists? So there's a question that's been posted. So it's an interesting question that occasionally I get asked at Speaker's Corner. So firstly, one has to define what atheism is. And so for me, atheism is the rejection of the positive claim that is made by a theist that a God exists. So I do not say that I know a God does not exist. So it's a single proposition. It is that I deny the claim made by a theist, or put another way, it is I don't believe that a theistic God, particularly the Abrahamic gods, exist. Now, deistic gods are harder to dismiss, although I can still do it from the point of view of saying there's no good evidence or reasons. But a deistic God has got less baggage that goes with it, so therefore there's more that needs to be asked there, and it's not so easy to dismiss that out of hand, except if you're going to say there's no evidence. But it depends what somebody says. If somebody says there's a deist God that says they just created the universe and then that God disappeared, well, that's fine, but we've got no evidence of that. But if somebody makes specific claims like, Islam or Christianity, then there's specific attributes, doctrines, etc., that we can examine. So that's it. It's just the rejection of a God or gods, depending on which ones are offered. That's all atheism is. Now, you can be all kinds. There can be a whole range of different atheists, secular humanists. You can even get spiritual atheists. You can get all kinds. But to answer your question more specifically, what is the purpose of life for an atheist? Each atheist will select their own purpose. There isn't an overriding purpose per se. Now, that might sound very strange to a theist who goes, oh, well, God's got a purpose for life, or he's got a purpose for us. For us as non-believers, I speak for myself, and my fellow non-believers can obviously give their own views. But for me, me personally, my purpose is to have a good life, to produce a good life for my family, for my friends, and hopefully leave the world a little bit better in my own view than when I started. And so that's the purpose I have, to have whatever experiences I'm going to have, to enjoy it to the best of my ability, to help others, to see more joy and peace and love in the world in whatever sense that is. And if part of that is debating people where I see less love, then I'm going to do that, obviously, because I want more love and less war, peace, etc. So my purpose is to spread that and to leave the world a slightly better place. Everybody's got their own, and feel free, you guys, to answer the question in your own way.
I think you just got caught on this question, because he is supposed there is a real purpose. I mean, that means something created you for a task in life. You were created for this task in life, and that's his whole point he wants to make. And what you said, I mean, it sounds reasonable, it sounds fine, it sounds like you thought about it, but he in general just wants to hear you don't have a real purpose because you don't believe in God, and therefore you're just an evil person for the whole humanity. Because the purpose was, from the beginning on, in his eyes, that you worship Allah and only Allah.
Well, I'm not sure. Let's ask him, because I think you are, perhaps not representing. Maybe you are representing his view accurately. Maybe he can.
He already explained that. Many asked him in the chat, what's your purpose? And he said his purpose is to worship Allah.
No, I understand that's his purpose, but then you went on to say that he suggests that we are evil or not good or whatever because our purpose is not that. And not every theist says that. Not every theist says that we atheists are evil or bad. Many theists, particularly ones that have thought about this a lot, are the first to say that atheists can be extremely moral, good people. They can bring value to the world, etc. Most theists that are quite smart will just say that we don't have a basis, an underlying foundation for it, but they will admit that we are good,
And I
we
can
bring
say,
value,
Rob,
etc.
and I can tell you that either they or don't know their Quran, if we are talking about a Muslim, or they are dishonest, because it is commanded in the Quran that you, even in heaven, you have to laugh at the people in hell. Doesn't matter if they were good in life, good atheist, moral atheist, and everything you can attribute them, make attributes to them. They are commanded that they are laughing in heavens to everybody in hell.
I
You've got a
still want to
hadith
know,
or
what
a
is the point
Quranic
of
verse for
worshipping
that?
God?
Sorry, I hear GPZ and Rob.
There is in one of the later, one of the last parts, the surahs in the last part of the Quran, like those.
What exactly does it say?
What does it say? I can check it up. Wait a minute.
Okay, while you're doing that,
I was just asking, why be created to worship? I mean, you had that story of him going off up to heaven and God saying you got to worship me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he got it knocked down to 5 times a day. And I'm thinking, like, and if he created us to worship, he didn't do a very good job. If he got now knocked down from 24/7 worship down to just 5 days and 5 hours.
Yeah, but the story, have you ever forgot the story why it's only 5 times?
I'm just saying it's rather pathetic. If Islam is saying you were only created to worship, and you don't. Well, you're not really worshipping.
Yeah, but that's the story about Muhammad bringing God down from worshipping him.
What is the prayer? What is the prayer that they actually say? Is it saying how wonderful God is and how lovely the Creator is and how omnipotent He is, or is it saying let God's will be to kill all the Jews and make mischief and war?
If he wanted to worship him 24/7, he would write that in the Quran. But he knew, that's described in Hadith, he knew that would be too much for the poor people. And even Moses said to Muhammad, that's too much for your people, bring God down. I mean, GP said that's already described in the Hadiths.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying it just seems a really stupid thing for a God to create a group of people to worship him.
Well, I do agree with you on that, GP. I do think it's irrational for an all-powerful creator to create us wonderful beings, limited as we are, in order so that we can just worship. It's almost like the ego needs something that it doesn't already have, and yet God is omni-everything, so there isn't anything that he needs. So rather, you have to say that he wants it. And what's the purpose? Why does he want us to worship him? And I have not heard a coherent answer from any theist on that point. So I agree, that's an irrational, if in fact that's what they believe and they profess that, then that's an irrational act from an all-powerful God.
I mean, he could have just as well make those nodding ducks, which you see nodding on films, up and down, not doing anything, just worshipping all the time and absolutely.
Yeah, but GP, that's also not entirely accurate, because they will say that we have free will. So, and we can argue the point, which I do, that free will and omniscience is contradictory. But they will say, no, we've got, so God created us with free will so that we can choose to worship him or not. And part of the test in life is to have a difficult life so that you can have you can live then in heaven in eternal bliss. But you've got to have a tough life here. You've got to worship. You've got to do all the things that, not listen to music, not have any sort of good life on this earth, so that you can have a good life in the after. In the afterlife.
Be a masochist. It sounds rather like the book of Job, doesn't it? That was what Job was all about. The devil being able to punish Job as much as he possibly could, just to see if Job would curse God.
Welcome, Raven. How are you?
Not bad. I wasn't going to join, but then the previous stream crashed. You put a fresh link to the Hangout, so I thought, fuck it.
Yeah, we'll come in for a while. So is there any other questions in the chat? Because obviously we're just answering some questions. So that question was really, what purposes has atheism got, or what is the purpose to life as an atheist? And I've obviously articulated mine.
Well, that's the question itself is is, I think, rather a misunderstanding of what an atheist is. It's like saying, what is the purpose of life for someone that doesn't believe in leprechauns? You know, my lack of belief in a God doesn't inform. It's not really the same thing.
It's not relevant to anything that an atheist does.
It's not.
It's atheism just means you're not bound to a religion, to a set of
You also
creeds.
could ask.
I don't collect stamps. So what is my purpose in life as a non-stamp collector?
No, you
Well, I don't really base it on.
You could even ask even more stupid question. If there were no experiment machines, what's your purpose in life? I mean, it makes no sense, but it's somehow to give them a thought or a kickoff to think about this question about purpose and their particular God.
It's also assuming that we have a purpose anyway. I mean, the best, if I was to just sum up an answer, my purpose is what I choose it to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we each have an individual purpose. I guess the theist claim, or in this case, the Muslim question is, is there an overall purpose for life in general as an atheist? And I think we have to honestly say, no, there isn't a
well, yeah.
theological purpose.
No, I completely disagree. It's a common, I mean, just to quote Ricky Gervais, it's a common myth that atheists have nothing to live for. It's the exact opposite. We have everything to live for and nothing to die for.
Yeah, but that's not the claim, though. That's not the claim. Or that's not the position. The position is, is there a universal purpose to our life from an atheistic point of view?
No, just what you find for yourself.
We go. No, agreed. And that's what we need to be honest and say, no, there's no universal purpose because we don't believe in a universal purpose creator. So therefore, there's no universal purpose. That doesn't mean we can't have individual purpose for our life, and that can be whatever we choose. The other question that Fees asked, which is an interesting one as well, is, let me go back to it and see what people have got to say about this. Fees asked, is there anything from the Quran that we would like to keep in current society? So is there anything in the Quran that either agrees with what we currently believe or is in some way superior or better than anything? It doesn't have to be morals. Is there anything that we could say, point to in the Quran honestly and go, yes, that's something that we could, quote, keep or use or do use?
I can't
can you snip certain parts off?
Sorry, one at a time. I didn't hear you. I'll post the question in our chat again. There you go.
I mean, taking care of children whose parents died, probably good.
But that's nothing new. That's nothing very.
Oh,
nothing.
I mean, that's not from the Quran. It has to be something from the Quran that was never before seen or to take it serious, because either then the question would make no sense, because the question is about the Quran.
So the question needs to be rephrased. Is there anything specifically that the Quran alone advocates that we would want to keep in society today? That would probably be a better question.
I could think of something.
The answer is no.
Yes, the ability of beef burgers to raise the dead so they could tell you who killed them. I mean, the police would find that immensely useful. And they wouldn't
sure, but
it would be very handy if you could slap someone.
I've never seen that happen and demonstrated.
Talking animals. I'd love to have a chat with my dog. We could have a long chat about cats and what in the park today.
I don't think you would like to. Anyway, I found the ayah that you were talking about, that okay, so it is in Surat Al-Mutaffifin. Indeed.
Is there, stop, wait. Is there a reason why you take Sahih International and not another? Just a question.
No, it's just the first one that popped up.
What are you doing this in relation to now, Abu?
Because you asked me to find this.
It's laughing from heaven.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
And it's also kind of interesting because it's a bit like bullying. Anyway, so Surah 83, verse 29. Indeed, those who committed crimes used to laugh at those who believed, and when they passed by them they would exchange derisive glances, and when they returned to their people they would return jesting. And when they saw them they would say, "Indeed, those are truly lost." But they had not been sent as guardians over them. So today those who believed are laughing at the disbelievers, and adorned couches observing, "Have the disbelievers not been rewarded this day for what they used to do?" Like in Hellfire.
Yeah, but you
And
can't
it's
prove hellfire, can you?
what?
It's not quite this one I was mentioning, because there is another one where really people have to love from heaven to
There is
others.
hadith about that.
No, it wasn't the Quran, but I really would have to look it up.
And what I was
And
saying was you can't prove hellfire, so you can't prove that statement you just said from the Quran is true.
somebody other asked a little question about yes, was Muhammad illiterate? I have to say, if you take the hadiths, some hadiths, no, he could read and write, because a contract was made, was prepared, and he has to sign it. And from his side of views, his people said, in the end, Muhammad has to sign with Rasulallah, meaning the messenger of God, and the other party said, no, we don't want this part in the contract about he being a messenger of God, and they then
There was a
nearly
Sahabi
started
that
to
wrote-
fight. Yeah, but there was nearly a fight, and then Muhammad just took the feather and said, let me clarify this, and just crossed everything that mentioned him about messenger of God, and just with his name sign it.
But couldn't someone
So
have
he
just have read
couldn't.
to it?
No, in the hadith it said he took the initiative and corrected the contract, and he signed just with his name, and put everything aside, his title or his status with God, etc.
So believe, this is Surah 7 verse 158. So believe in Allah and his messenger, the unlettered prophet, who believes in Allah and his words, and follow him that you may be guided. وَرَسُولِهِ النَّبِيُّ الْأُمِّي in Arabic. So
I still don't understand why he couldn't have known what part of a document said what. I mean, if he commissioned it himself, then he could have just had a scribe write it. And
yeah, but there
it's
are hadith that he had. There was a Sahaba who wrote for him.
Point out, oh, no, it says it right there. Okay, I'll scratch that out.
Yeah, there were other people that wrote for him. There's hadith about that.
Yeah, but now we have to question which hadith do you take it serious? Because
No, but I take this, just because you can scratch something doesn't mean that you can read and write. I mean, you can't read and write Arabic, but you can scratch something out anyway.
well, you have to know what you are scratching. You have to.
If you just randomly scratch everything, this is in the end. Because if you have dictated it before, you can like use logic to figure it out.
No, you can't do that if you can't read and write. No chance. I mean, I have no clue in Arabic. Well, a little bit clue, but let's take kanji and romanji, meaning Chinese and Japanese. I mean, if I see something and he said, well, here's a text and he has mentioned that you murdered somebody. Just if you didn't murder somebody, scratch the part. I mean, come on, Abu. That's no reasonable thing to mention.
Okay, if you have dictated a letter that is one page, and in the end it says, bananas are bad for your health, and you know that that's the last sentence, it doesn't matter what language it is, it's easy to just...
No, because not every language and is in speaking is the same like you wrote it down.
Yeah,
and
but he must have
in the same order.
Although he couldn't read and write, he must have seen Arabic letters.
So what?
Well, why couldn't Gabriel point out the verses? You could see Gabriel.
I don't know.
Look,
I mean, it's a possibility. You could see this Gabriel, and Gabriel could read. So Gabriel
literacy was very common before. Like you can just go back probably a couple of generations, and maybe your grandparents were illiterate. I mean, people back in the days didn't know how to read or write. They maybe had they seen some letters and things.
Albo, that's not the topic. We are talking about the most highest human being ever lived on this planet at all. And don't forget, he was a merchant, a caravan guy, one who handled things, and one who talked to people and sold things in his career at the beginning before he was prophet, and who buy things. And
how can you have a
most people who could buy and sell? What?
There were many merchants that were. You can take another guy like Genghis Khan. He was illiterate, but he valued like written language. I think he stole the Uriguri.
He didn't stole it. He commanded his people to make a new scripture and to make a new.
But he couldn't read and write himself.
Let's get back to a question from the chat. Because the question was originally, if we've only got our own purpose, then what's the difference between? And it's poorly phrased, but we'll read it anyway. What's the difference between a cockroach and a human if both doesn't have a purpose? What makes a human superior to a cockroach? Two different questions.
A cockroach doesn't have a purpose.
It depends what you mean by like superior. There's nothing fundamental superior with human beings. I mean, cockroaches has probably lived for a much longer time. They're probably more numerous. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I think they are. And if you have a kind of nuclear winter and all human beings die, probably the cockroach is going to survive. So there's nothing superior about us. It's just that our nervous system is more developed. I don't think cockroaches have subjective experiences, and we clearly have. So,
well, my answer would be my answer would be a lot more simple. It's us that puts more value on a human life than a cockroach life.
Yeah.
But that's subjective, Raven.
There's nothing objectively better about humans.
You know, funnily enough, in the Church of Satan, as founded by Anton LaVey. So I'm talking specifically LaVeyan Satanism, not any other kind of Satanism. But they actually argue that that a non-human can theoretically be more important and more valuable than a human. One example would be, imagine you've got someone that doesn't contribute to society, just like a slob, just someone that makes no contribution, doesn't have a job. It would actually be a greater sin to kill a spider than it would be to kill that person, because a spider is contributing to the ecosystem, it's doing what a spider does, it's actually fulfilling its role and its purpose, whereas this particular human isn't. So it would be a greater sin to kill the spider than a human.
Okay, but the question goes back. I think you guys are, while it's interesting, the original question is, and obviously the person would have to say what they mean by superior. But I know you guys are trying to offer reasons why you think cockroaches or spiders are not inferior. But let's assume that we mean what superior in every terms. Okay, well, obviously not every terms. Okay, so let me put it this way. Let me rephrase the question. What is the argument to suggest that humans are more valuable, objectively, if there is such a thing, than cockroaches?
I have an answer to that, if you want to.
Go ahead.
Okay, my answer is that cockroaches' nervous systems are very, very simple. Although in one way, they're very smart, like they can navigate. But one very, very crucial difference, and this is something I can't prove, but I don't think cockroaches have subjective experiences. I think it's only like greater animals with developed kind of cerebral cortexes that have subjective experiences. And without any subjective experiences, it is as if you don't exist in a way.
So your reply to the question would be sentience, self-awareness.
Not necessarily self-awareness, but awareness that you have subjective experience of some kind.
You always are forgetting something, guys. We are talking about Islam. So even in the whole global topic of Islam, a cockroach has also a purpose. So we have to find out what's the purpose for a cockroach. You can't say a cockroach hasn't a purpose, because obviously it was created by Allah. So we have to discuss these things and not nerve systems. That doesn't bring us closer to Allah. So please keep it real.
The question was directed at us. So the Muslim person directed the question at us. It wasn't to do with Islam. He's obviously suggesting that Islam's got a purpose and it's all great. He's asking the question, why are we in some way superior? So we need to answer from our point of view, not from his.
According to the
because we put more value on a human life.
One at a time.
The real question,
because we put more value on a human life than non-human.
The real question is, are there cockroaches in heaven? That is the question.
I would like to say, in the Qur'an, even a camel can be given the title of a prophet. So does that make atheists more superior to anyone from Islam?
What do you mean?
I would just wonder if it makes a prophet camel superior.
The camel was not a prophet. It was a.
Well, I've read some people saying it was a prophet.
No, it's not. It was a sign from God.
Well, isn't that what a prophet is?
No, a prophet is a dude.
Didn't it talk as well? And it also, I know it changed milk into water into milk.
Can we try and keep on the topic of the question?
It was a prophet.
On the topic, what was the question?
So what makes a human superior to a cockroach? And inverted commas, whatever superior
We
means.
look after other animals. We have the ability to. And a lot of the other animals in our ecosphere have also an ability to look after other animals.
Yeah, we've done an excellent job of looking after other animals. I don't know how many species that has gone extinct.
Cockroaches don't. Cockroaches won't look after other animals.
No, but at least they don't exterminate all the other. They didn't exterminate the Tasmanian tiger or anything.
I thought you were going to say they exterminated the Jews.
Well,
I'm sure if a cockroach could actually talk.
Human beings fail to exterminate.
I'm sure if a cockroach could talk. I'm sure if a cockroach could talk, they'd say, "You're not superior to me. Don't kill me. My life is just as valuable."
Well, part of the reason perhaps that it's not superior is because it can't talk. But Abu, you suggest that one thing is subjective experience. GP, you've suggested another thing is because we take care of other animals. So if we found, let's say, dolphins for you, Abu, and let's say chimps for you, GP, are we equal or superior to chimps or dolphins, given your objections?
I think there seems to be a progression, isn't it? I mean,
There is.
if we gauge chimps, they seem to be about the level of a small child, don't they, as far as intelligence is concerned? But other than that, they behave very much like humans.
Yeah, they're very similar. But there is one thing that's another factor to this is subjective experience in combination with the possibility of creating beings that have even better subjective experience and also have better knowledge and possibility to go to other planets and so on. And that I don't think. I'm open to the possibility that at least dolphins could have, maybe they have richer inner lives. I'm not, because they have really large brains. And
well, there are some people who are actually trying to push the laws to give certain non-humans, great apes, dolphins, whales, etc., to actually give them the legal status of a non-human person.
Yeah, I think I support that. I think that's. I think you should.
Because the thing is, just looking at what Rob has posted in the chat, he didn't say what makes a cockroach superior. He just said what makes a cockroach different. I mean, if it's different, then you just have to look at a cockroach and a human. You can see the difference. But when it comes to superiority, I mean, I actually don't really view any life form as being inherently superior to another. I just view them as different. Would I kill a cockroach to save a human? Yes, but that's because I put more value on the life of a human than I do the life of a cockroach.
I think Darwin's talked about this, like never say something is higher or lower. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it's like a bee. If we got rid of all the humans today, the ecosphere wouldn't be affected so much as if we've got rid of bees, because then half the plants in the world would just be exterminated through lack of pollination. So bees are more essential than humans.
But one like other interesting question on the same line is like, if we humans can produce artificial brains that are superior to our own, so we figured out, okay, how does subjective consciousness works. So let's say that my favorite theory, Jinn&Tonic's theory, is correct, that it's integrated information. So we create kind of a computer that creates this integrated information. So it's like, but it's much, much faster, and it can create much, much richer subjective experience. And at the same time, it's much, much smarter than human beings in that case, and can do much more things. I would probably say that I think that intelligence has a higher value in a sense than our intelligence and our subjective experience.
You know, the interesting thing is, if someone is a fan of the horror genre, whenever you watch particular films or TV shows, or you read particular books or comics, some of the most terrifying stories, whether it's vampires taking over the world, or robots gaining gaining sentience, or aliens, a more advanced alien civilization coming and subjecting us. The most terrifying stories, inevitably, are the stories where a non-human treats humans in exactly the same way that we treat non-humans.
Yeah, and I think that's quite plausible. I mean, there's nothing that says that why would, obviously, subjective experience and intelligence has been produced by chance, by evolution, by natural selection. So there's nothing that says that we can't create machines that have even more subjective experience and are intelligent at the same time.
But does that mean but does that mean that they are more worthwhile, though? I mean, if you think of, let's say, a 3-year-old, adults are much more advanced, much more solidified than it is a 3-year-old. I mean, just for what you're talking about as superiority, that would make an adult superior to a child. But does that mean that it's true? Does that mean that an adult is superior to a child, and the life of an adult is more valuable than the life of a child?
Well, but in the case of the child, there's also a potential that he's going to grow up and so on. But I'm not sure that we are more subjective, that we have more subjective experience than a child. That might even be the opposite, because because of neurological reasons.
Well, not talking purely.
But the thing is, with like super intelligence, and if we could create an artificial cerebral cortex that has subjective experience and is and because of like, I mean, as I said before, our brains are just bags of seawater that are sending electrochemical signals. But if you can create a brain that is purely electrical or purely optical or something, then they can have subjective experience, thinks thousands of times smarter than we do, if not millions of times more faster. And in that case, if we create, they would be like gods to us, because they can think about things that we couldn't think of, and they can.
Okay, well, let me ask you. Well, let me ask you this: have you ever seen The Matrix?
Oh yeah.
Would you, assuming that actually was real, would you be on the side of the humans or the machines?
That's an interesting question. I mean, as I said, The Matrix is a little bit different, because there's.
Well, no, it's non-humans. It's these machines, and they are exactly what you said: higher intelligence, higher processing.
Okay. Yeah. That's the problematic, because one way, if it's true that they are have a higher degrees of subjective experience. They have higher levels of subjective experience and are more intelligent and have a greater potential for flourishing. Then in a way, if I'm gonna be like look at it in an objective way, yes, they are more valuable than human beings. But in the same way, I'm a kind of a speciesist, so I'm kind of attached to my species. I'm sorry. on an emotional.
Well, this just comes back to what I said in the beginning. You know, why does why do we value human life more than non-human life? Because we put that value on it. We value the lives of ourselves more than others. It's that simple.
Nepotism, or it's called nepotism. We are born.
Okay, let's have, I think, at least one more, maybe two more questions from the chat then. One was Fee asking a famous question in the Krauss versus Tsortzis debate. And it was something I was asked, and I'd be interested in your opinion, guys, on the discussion. Is incest wrong between two consenting adults?
No.
Or let me put it another way.
Hang
on. Let me make it more specific. Is incest wrong between two consenting same-sex adults?
There's nothing metaphysical wrong with it. It's not metaphysically sinful. It's just I'm not sure that is a good thing to do from a purely psychological point of view. But legally, if they consent and they don't have any children and so on, no, it should not be illegal. But I'm not. But there are things that should not be illegal that may not be the smartest thing to do, because I don't know.
I'm not necessarily sure I agree. The idea that it shouldn't be, that it should be legal. It might seem a bit hypocritical because I've just said no, there's nothing wrong with it, and now I'm saying it should be against the law. But you know, I mean, when we actually think of, this idea of an act of incest where there's no coercion, no power dynamics, anything like that. I mean, when was the last time you heard of a case like that? Pretty much every case of incest reported has involved abuse. You know, I mean, if you think of like, I mean, it's kind of like if I had a story. If some girl said to me that, or it she didn't even say to me, but I just sort of figured out that she was having sex with her father, my first response would be,
talking about.
You know, it must be some consensual thing.
Okay,
my first thought would be, wow.
That's not what we're talking about.
The example that we talked about, which is consenting adults in a family, ideally same-sex. So we get rid of the biological imperative, and we say these are consenting adults over the age of 18 in the same family, and they are the same sex, which means they cannot reproduce. Is that morally wrong? It's got nothing to do with the law.
But I don't think that was the question in the Lawrence Krauss debate. In the Lawrence Krauss debate, I think it was a sister and a brother.
Well, no, that was Krauss's assumption.
Okay, but anyway, in both those cases, legally, if they are same sex or not same sex, if they are adult, they want to do it and they consent, there's nothing we can do about it legally.
Okay, so let me ask the question again.
It's the best thing to do because it might create psychological problems and so on, but legally.
Okay, so let me ask the question again so that we answer the question directly. Is it morally right or wrong from each of your perspectives if consenting same-sex family members have incest? Morally, not legally. Is it morally correct? If it isn't, why not? If it is, why?
There's ramifications.
I don't think it's correct or incorrect.
One at a time.
It depends on, I think it's morally incorrect in the sense, if you know that this will cause more suffering than the pleasure, then yes, we could, in a sense, from a Sam Harris moral landscape, say that yes, this is wrong. But the thing is, if they consent to do it, then they want to do it, then they are acting on the assumption that this will increase their happiness. So from Sam Harris' moral landscape point of view, this is probably the moral thing to do. But this
what's
is
your position, not Sam's position? What's your position, and why do you say it?
My position is, if you have a perfect knowledge that this will increase the total amount of happiness, then yes, it's the moral thing to do. But I doubt that that's the case. I mean, I think there are, but I
So
don't.
are you fucking your brother, Abu? Is that what you're telling us?
No, that's not what I'm telling you.
Why not? You just said it is morally okay and good. So why don't you fuck your brother if you have one?
Well, if I
Well,
had
I mean,
one,
that's kind of like
I don't
saying
think he would
I
consent
have a
to
problem
it.
with homosexuality, therefore why don't I fuck him?
Raven, let him answer it. So,
No,
so you would
if I
fuck your wait. You would fuck your brother if you consented. Am I understanding right, Abu? Am I understanding you right?
no, I have never considered that, and I'm
What's
not
your
gonna
position,
consider.
Ike?
He's just trying
I'm not
to
gay, so the
put me
same
on the spot.
sex incest doesn't. I can't really answer it because I'm not gay. If I would have a sister, no, I wouldn't. I would just feel it gross. I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's a really
This is
moral
what I
thing.
mean. I mean, I'm like, has this really? This has happened. I think.
Guys,
There
I
are
think
stories.
you
Their
guys-
story didn't Cesare Borgia and his sister. There are rumors that they had incest sex. Cesare Borgia, but he was kind of psychopathic dude in general. So, but I think most people they would just feel revolted by that. I'm not
Okay,
sure
let me-
that's a smart thing to do.
Let me ask it again, because you guys seem to be doing sometimes occasionally, if I may observe what theists do, you're dancing around the question. So let me ask it so that you don't have an escape route here, because I want your opinion. There's no right or wrong. I want to know your opinion. So you're giving me caveats here. If your next door neighbors said to you, each one of you guys, hey, we're a family of over 18, we're consenting adults and we're having incest, would you say that's morally right or wrong?
I would say I don't know.
They can do what they want. I mean,
Yeah, I would say it's morally wrong to prevent them from doing that, because that goes against my kind of liberal values. If they want to do it, it would be morally wrong for me to prevent them.
So is it morally right or wrong for them to do it? Not what's morally wrong for you to prevent.
I already answered. You don't. Me at least. You don't have to ask again. If
Well,
they want to
answer that. Did you say yes or no? I didn't hear you.
I said yes. They are okay with it. If
Okay.
they don't,
No, but look, I'm not trying to dance
asking
around it.
what
I think it's okay.
I'm honestly trying to give a correct answer. As I said, if you by moral say like Sam Harris view of morality, if they know that this is going to increase their happiness, yes, then it is the right thing to do. I just doubt that is the case. I'm afraid that this is going to cause psychological problems in these individuals.
Okay, but Abu, as you don't follow Sam Harris's view, I don't think, do you?
No,
No, you don't. So okay, so you're not arguing.
No,
You're not
I'm
arguing
following.
Sam's position.
I'm
asking.
a Sam Harris general idea.
You do accept the moral landscape as a moral.
Yeah, I accept it. I'm sympathetic to it.
Okay, so but you, Abu, personally, would you say that it's right or wrong? In other words, if somebody came along and said it's wrong, would you fight for their right to say yes, it's okay to do it?
Look, I'm not trying to dance around it. As I said, I don't have enough knowledge about their brains and like if this is going to increase happiness or decrease. If it increases happiness, yes, then it's morally right. If it decreases, then it's morally wrong. But I don't know how to know. It's impossible to know that, I think. At least
If they tell you that, yep, it's great for us, we're having a wonderful time, it couldn't be better.
Yeah, then it's morally right.
Is that good enough, their anecdotal evidence for you?
Yes, that's good enough.
Great. By the way, I'm in exactly the same position as you. Until somebody can bring me demonstrable evidence that incest is harmful, even over and above what people say, then I'm happy to change my mind on the spot. Until that position, I'm in the same position as you.
But I just want to say that, like, I have no personal experience of this myself.
But
so
I'm not saying you are.
I'm just afraid. Yeah, but I'm just afraid that they might think that this is the right thing to do. Maybe they are like, I don't know.
They?
Like, say that there's a maybe 20-year-old guy and his 21-year-old sister, and maybe they are like just want to do something crazy, and maybe they should think like this may cause psychological problem further along. You know, I'm just afraid of
Well, the
that. but-
hypothetical is that there's no harm. There's no psychological damage. There's no emotional damage.
Okay, if yeah, in that case, that's no problem. But that's just what I'm afraid of.
No, but that's fine. Is there anybody else here in the chat that has a different view?
I don't necessarily think it's morally right, but I don't really think it'd be morally wrong either.
Well, you've got to take a position. Which one would you take?
Well, I'm taking a position. I'm saying I don't know if it'd be morally right, but I do not think it'd be morally wrong.
Okay, so what
That is my
position is
position. I don't
that?
think
I'm
it's morally
confused.
wrong.
What position is that?
I don't know. Well, in this hypothetical situation where there's no harm, no coercion, nothing bad happens because of it, I don't think it's morally wrong.
Okay, that's fine.
And I see no benefit whatsoever in trying to punish them. I just don't see a benefit.
What if after years of marriage you found out that your wife was really your long lost sister? That sounds like a very famous Greek
Me?
myth.
Well, I think I don't think I'd ever be able to look her in the eye again.
Yeah, it sounds like what's the Greek drama?
But it's a stupid
Greek
stupid
tragedy.
idea that just because you don't think something's wrong, therefore you want to do it. I mean, I don't think homosexuality is wrong. That doesn't mean I'm going to go fuck a man. I'm not interested in men. I'm straight.
That begs my next question to Abu. He didn't answer it right. Are you gay?
Me? No. I'm
Are
sorry.
you sure?
As sure as I possibly could be.
Ah, okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're probably a very nice person and so on, but I don't have any such feelings for you, Ike.
No, I suspected you always to be gay. I'm personally not, but I suspected you to be gay.
You
and
suspected me for gay.
that is the secret leaving of Islam because you're gay. That I just thought.
There was a guy that I knew who was a Muslim that I suspected was gay. But you have to remember, it's quite like it's not that common. Like if you take like a probability that you're gonna be gay, it's just what is it? 1 in how common is it?
I don't know.
Of the population.
My understanding is that there is a small percentage of the population for which I don't know if they're born that way. I don't know the research, but that's what some people claim, that in fact you're born that way.
What, gay or incestuous?
Yeah. I think they are born that way. I'm pretty sure they are born that way. But how common is it? Is it 4% or?
I don't know.
I
what
think
the
it is
percentage
between 5 and 10%.
Sure.
Did you talk about gay? Or you talk about homosexuality or incest?
No, we've moved on.
Homosexuality.
Well, homosexuality, I think it's about 10% is the estimate.
Nah, I don't think that.
That
Is
was
it really
amongst
10%?
sheep. And the famous Lawrence Krauss, he said that about 10% of sheep are gay. But amongst humans, I mean, it's hard to say because you don't see that often fucking gays around and to ask everyone. But it is probably between 5 and 10%.
I've met plenty of gays over the years, so that's some gay friends. More common than you think. Well, people don't go around advertising it, do they? Like you don't walk around with a sign hanging from your neck saying what your sexuality is.
I should take you guys down to Speaker's Corner with me. You'd be great. I need to learn what you guys are doing. I'm not very good at it. You're able to change topics and swap around and not stay on the same point, which is probably a good thing. You'd confound theists down there. I try to stay on one topic until we get somewhere with it. But you guys hop around from topic to topic, and I need to learn that skill. I think I'm just not good at that.
Just smoke some.
You know,
weed.
if you actually go back and watch Chris,
cocaine.
if you actually go back and watch his show after it's finished, you'll find that in the beginning I just flat out give a straight answer, then I just go along with the rest of you.
And I'm trying always to bring everybody back to Islam. So you don't accuse me of not being in the topic.
Yeah.
That's why I say it'd be good to have all of you down there. Well, okay, so
I actually probably could come. I actually probably could join you in Speaker's Corner, probably December or January.
whereabouts are you located? Obviously not in London then. You don't have to say where you are, but you're some distance out.
Hundreds and hundreds. I'm a few hundred miles away from London.
Yeah. Yeah, come down. It'd be better if you come in summertime because the days are longer. You get more time to speak. It's warmer. It's more pleasant. You know, December, January is cold. It's dark. It's not the best time of the year to come.
Bright lights will be able to see you and throw stones.
Yeah, they don't. They don't have lights on in Speaker's Corner unless there's a big show going on in Hyde Park. Otherwise, when it gets dark, those lights are so minuscule you can hardly see each other. And then, of course, the guys with the cameras have all got their bright spotlights on. Anyways,
if they've got their spotlights, then that's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, except that it's sometimes in people's eyes. I'm used to having lights in my eyes, so it doesn't bother me too much. But some people don't like having lights in their eyes and stuff at night.
Well, I would Speaker's Corner as one of those poser dickheads that wear sunglasses at night.
Oh, you would.
Well, you know one of those posers. You see them in town and city centres on club nights, and it's the middle of the night. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And they're walking around with sunglasses. It's fucking not bad.
Okay, any more questions in the chat for those who are watching? I know there's a slight delay. Otherwise, we're going to call it an evening and move to the hadith. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes just to see if there's any more questions for this show. Otherwise, we're going to call it to an end. One question for you, Abu. Remember God's blessing upon you and what he sent down to you of the Al-Kadeb and Al-Hak-Hamid to enlighten you with it. I don't know what the question is.
Kitab and Al-Hikmah.
There we go. What does Al-Hikmah means here in your understanding?
Oh, dude. Some years ago, I could give you an exact answer. I was actually hafid that surah, by the way. So, Kitab al-Hikmah. Dude. What is... Dude, I can look up in Tafsir ibn Kathir and things like that. I actually have that here in my library, but that's the kind of questions I could answer immediately some years ago, but today I don't remember. I can check it up.
No problem. You can bring it for the next show. Maybe you can remember and bring it in for the next show. Alrighty. You want to close off with the hadith, Abu?
Yes, because Mr. Saracen, he said that he follows mutawatir. So I have found a list of mutawatir hadith. So one of the first on this list is from Sahih Muslim. Reported by Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated. When the Messenger of Allah, may peace be upon him, died, and Abu Bakr was appointed as his successor Khalif, some tribes among the Arabs became apostates. Omar asked Abu Bakr, why would you fight against the people when Allah's Messenger ﷺ declared, I have been directed to fight against people till they say, there is no God but Allah, and he who professes it is granted full protection of his property and life on my behalf except for a right cause. His other affairs rest with Allah. Upon this Abu Bakr said, by Allah, I would definitely fight against those who served the prayer from zakah, for it is the obligation upon the rich. By Allah, I would fight against them even if they withheld a cord used for hobbling the feet of camel, which they used to give to Allah's Messenger. May peace be upon him. Yes. Why would you fight against the people when Allah's Messenger, I have been directed to fight against people till they say there is no God but Allah. This is very interesting, and also as a segue to next week, because one of the things that people like Saracen will accuse, or it is quite correct in one way, that Khawarij make warfare against Muslims. But Abu Bakr, in his Hurub al-Ridda, he made war against the Arab because they prevented the payment of zakah. Not because they said that they were murtad, like that they denied that the messenger of Allah is the prophets and so on. They still call themselves Muslims. So that's a good way for next week's topic. That will be Khawarij.
Cool. Thank you very much to everybody. Thanks to the viewers for joining in for a second stream because the first one crashed.
Can I ask a quick question before we end?
Go for it.
Just considering the amount of incest that famously does go on with some Muslim communities, if someone said to you, if like someone in Speaker's Corner said to you, do you have a problem against incest? Would it ever enter your head that they're trying to catch you out to paint you as an Islamophobe?
No, I'd be looking at it just from incest in general. I wouldn't be thinking of a particular group because I don't know enough about different groups. So no, I would just.
I mean, if you consider Muslims, for example, they're like what, 5% of the population, but I think they actually make up 33% of early child death and disabled children because they have a history of incest.
Yeah, but remember that.
No, I mean,
that form of incest.
I think it's most. I think in this country it's mostly Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, but it's like cousin after cousin after cousin after cousin after cousin. It's like always keeping it up in the family, and because very quickly you get to because there's no genetic variety. Like on a genetic level, it's like a brother and sister having kids, and there's a huge number of, like I said, it makes up like 33% of British children who either die at birth or soon after birth or have lifelong disabilities as a result of incest.
Yeah, but I think that's very clear, and I've made that point as well. Incest between consenting adults that leads to offspring is a negative thing, and that should be banned because of the biological consequences, which are demonstrably negative. So I don't think there's any question there at all. The question comes in when it's same sex or when there's protected sex or some other form. If we can then find that there's some kind of negativity, then we could call that morally wrong. But your example is clearly morally wrong. I don't think there's any dispute from any thinking person, apart from those who are doing it, who aren't thinking or don't accept science or whatever the case may be. But for the rest of us, it's as clear-cut as it gets.
But that is kind of interesting. But that's if you're saying that the reason why it is bad is because you will have offspring with like genetical defects, then that you could, in a way, you could kind of, if you follow that logic, then it would be morally wrong to not practice eugenics, for example. Because
one of the things that they actually scan for when you do a sonogram on a pregnant woman is if there are any visible disabilities. For instance, they'll test for Down syndrome, and if it's very clear that a baby has, for example, Down syndrome, then they'll say, "Do you want to abort?" Yeah,
and that happens very often.
And so, what's the point there? What is the point you're making there?
That if you follow that logic that it's wrong because it can create genetical defects, then it should also be wrong to do things to like let people reproduce if there is an increased likelihood of any genetical defect.
Well, how are you going to know that?
Well, today we can know that quite easily. I mean, you can make a genetical test and like see if you have any genetical diseases. And one thing, for example, some things that are very like, say that you know that you have the genes for schizophrenia, for example. I mean, that is highly genetically like related, and like say that you have those genes, then the likelihood that your children will get schizophrenia will increase very, very much.
If you've got statistics, I'd be interested to see that. I mean, if you're just saying it because you think it might be true, that's one thing. But if you've got statistics that say that it's more likely that you'll have a genetically defective child if you have schizophrenia, and it's even as much or more so than, for example, incest, then yes, by that logic, then we should deny those people. They could have a child, an adopted child, but to have a child that's going to be genetically defective in the same way that incest children are with the same rates, etc., then yes, by that logic, it would be the same thing. Why would any thinking rational
the actual
person...
rates, the actual rates of it though, the actual rates of children of incest being defective, as you said, is actually, it's less than 50%.
That's still pretty high, though, isn't it?
Well, no, because I'm not sure the exact percentage, but I know it's less than half. So, you know, statistically, you're going to get a child that's fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't go with that. Would you take a chance at 50%? I wouldn't. But I think it's fairly clear that.
No, it's less than 50%. I'm saying less because I can't remember the exact the exact probability statistically, but I know it's less than half. So statistically, chances are you can have a perfectly normal child.
But let's suppose that it's just 10%. I mean, I think you still would say that it should not be allowed because there's still a 10% risk. The problem with that is that...
But there's a 90% chance that it'll be fine.
Yeah, there's 90%. But even if just that 1 in 10, like if you follow that logic, then there are a lot of kind of genetically related diseases that should prevent people from having children.
Well, yes.
Well, but having children without checking the embryo before they give birth to it.
Well, I would agree with that.
I think one of my biggest fears is, I mean, I don't have children. But you know, if I ever did have a child, I think my biggest fear would be having a child that was disabled to the point they couldn't look after themselves. And the reason I'd be so terrified about that is because I'm gone. I mean, as a parent, you're supposed to raise the child, make sure they're independent, and then you get out of the way, and then you die. But you die knowing that you're leaving behind a child that can wash themselves, cook for themselves, get a job, pay rent, do all the things that they need to do. They are self-sufficient. If I had a child that wasn't like that, if I had a child that would need care for their entire life, I wouldn't be able to die. I'd have to be immortal. I would have to outlive my child because once I die, what's going to happen to them?
Yeah, that's like
that'd be the thing. If I had a child like that, I couldn't die. It's just absolutely, the idea of it is just absolutely terrifying.
Those questions are pretty useless because the Qur'an already provides who you can fuck and who not. So I don't.
But you see what I'm saying there?
Islam, so. But yeah, as I said, but like if you take that logic to its extreme, you're afraid that your child will be born with like Down syndrome or something like that. But like it's not that like clear. Like say that you have a child that is born like physically not disabled but physically weak and with an IQ of like 70. So or 70.
I'm saying that my fear is that I have a child that even when they're an adult cannot be independent, cannot look after themselves.
Yeah, but it's not like it's not black and white. It's gray. If you're physically weak and have an IQ of say 75, then maybe you can have a very easy job, but there's a huge risk that you're going to be unemployed. You're going to have a lot of problems. Like compare that, and if you could just do a kind of genetical engineering so that your child will have an IQ of 175 instead, and will be like physically strong and beautiful and all that.
Well, no, because I disagree with what you're saying, because what I'm saying is a child who cannot be independent. You could still be independent if you have if you have an IQ of 70 and you're physically weak. You know, you can work.
Well, you can work, but what if that child doesn't find a job? It would have a lot of
McDonald's. You could still have a life of independence where I don't need to be terrified that I'm going to die, and then you know they're not going to have someone to look after him, because like it's imagine having. Let me put it another way. Imagine having a child, and they're basically in a state of eternal childhood themselves. They'll never grow up. They're Peter Pan.
Abu, your question, what is a mutawatir hadith? Mutawatir is like it's narrated in many different ways. So it's not like one chain. It's narrated in from many different directions. Yeah, but like, can't you see that it's not black and white? It's not like you independent or you're not independent. It's like it's a grayscale. So the thing is that we already today have the technology possible to and they are doing this with like people that know that they have genetical diseases, that you can take out embryos and make genetical tests on them and then shows what embryo that you're gonna give birth to. But in the same way, we could do the same thing if we could correlate like having a very high IQ, like having very symmetrical face, so that you will be beautiful and you will have a certain hair color and you will have a certain length and certain physical strength. If you could relate those genes and make those same tests, then we could we can already do this today. So like, if you take that logic to its extreme, it would be immoral not to practice that kind of eugenics.
Why?
You see what I'm saying? Because you're
Not really.
denying your children those abilities. Sam Harris talked about this. Like, say, he gives an example. Say that you would.
So you mean a society where the vast majority of people actually do this? So you're sort of deliberately and knowingly setting your child up for loneliness and failure?
No, can I say, Sam Harris, he talks about that, like, imagine that you go into, say that you give birth to a daughter, that she will be extremely beautiful, she will have an IQ of 160, she will be extremely musical and can learn play all the Beethoven and Mozart piano, everything, like in before the year of 10. Then they come an evil dude and gives her a pill, like in I don't know, that decreases her IQ with 60, so she will just be normally musical and will just be normally beautiful. I mean, in that case, you would think that this person is extremely evil because he has decreased her. But the thing is, she will just be normal. She will have an IQ of 100, which is the average in the Western world. And she will be normally beautiful and normally musical. But if that is morally wrong, and I think most people will say that giving her that pill is really, really, really bad. In that, since we already have the ability to genetically modify our children or just choose the right embryo, we already have the ability to make that happen. So when we're not doing that, we are like the guy that is giving this child this pill that is decreasing the IQ with 60 and so on.
Yeah, that argument can be made. Obviously, the Sam Harris argument was really to bring into view that even when two things are morally equivalent from a intellectual position, our intuitions, our emotions come into it. And so he was using that example to say, hey, you know, if you decrease, we as humans seem to be more against the decrease, the loss. We are more loss averse than we are gain, you know, to gain something. So if you had a child that was at a perfect 100 and was given the opportunity to get a pill to get to 160, but she wasn't given that pill, and you had somebody that was 160 and was given the pill and went back to 100, that loss is what people feel is immoral, whereas the potential gain is not seen as immoral. And so that's really the point that's being made there. Even though it's the same basic thing, our aversion to loss is something we need to take into account in our moral evaluation of life. People are much more morally averse to loss aversion than they are to gaining something that they never had. And so I think that's the point to be made.
And yet, if you look at like athletes that dope to increase performance, you know, they're looked at in a very negative light.
Yeah, because they're doing something that would be considered cheating. If everybody did the same thing and there were no negative side effects, then that wouldn't have been seen as immoral, would it? Whoever can get themselves to the top position and there were no side effects, we wouldn't see as immoral, potentially.
But this is like I actually think that we have a kind of cognitive bias for this. As you said, we have a cognitive bias against losses, so we are more loss averse than we are kind of gain seeking, and we're also like have this that it has to be fair all the time, but like the result is the same. So in one way, I actually think it's kind of immoral the way we are acting today. We have the technology today to give all children or to increase the average IQ by, I mean, many points if we wanted to, but we are choosing not to do it. Because
when you say choosing not to do it, do you mean by them getting
by not using this technology?
In other words, for children not to be born or to be born or whatever.
By choosing the right embryo and so on.
Sure, I can agree with you on that. Yeah, that's fine. I think just most people don't see it that way. They don't know it exists, and even if it did, there could be some moral failing there. But just from a purely intellectual point of view, absolutely, it seems to be straightforward. That if you have the technology, you could only bring into being, because you now have the choice. They're not born yet, and you could bring into being only perfect human beings, or good human beings. Let's put it that way, as opposed to disabled. I would agree, you'd be a moral monster to bring in a disabled person if you had the choice.
But we are doing that all the time. We already have this technology available for us. It's just that it's only people with genetical diseases that are using it, and we are starting to have even more. Like we're starting to have technologies like CRISPR-Cas that we can like do gene editing. So we're starting to have this technology. We have at least one such technology that is already working, but we're not using it. And because of this, we're like imposing huge economical losses on our society compared to if we did use this technology. And we're imposing huge we're increasing the suffering by not using this technology. So, but we're just doing it because we're like so afraid of this beings.
Well, Abu, I know that you were in Saudi Arabia, for example, for a while. So I don't know if you'd be familiar with this, but I actually, and I can't quote it because I can't even remember where I came across this. But I do remember hearing that in Saudi, doctors will actually test husbands and wives, test their genetics, because apparently incest is quite common there as well. Lots of first cousins and shit. And apparently doctors will actually test to see genetic, I can't remember the word now. Yeah, but they'll actually test you genetically to see like how likely it is that you'll have a disabled child. But apparently a lot of husbands and wives just ignore it and go and do it anyway. But have you heard of anything like that happening in Saudi?
I mean, there are custom marriages, but I don't know.
No. About actually like government testing husbands and wives.
No, I don't remember that. No.
I should look that up. Try and figure out where I got it from.
There are actually absurdly some studies that they are quite good at, just because of this reason. Because if you want to study certain biological phenomena, countries like Saudi are, but I don't remember what exactly it was, but it's true.
Yes. All right, guys, on that note, a reminder for me, we won't take, can I just ask another question after Hadith, because we're now 20 minutes later, so I will remember that when the Hadith comes. That's the end of the show, so let's get our questions in before the end of the Hadith. But on that note, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to everybody in the chat, and thank you to fellow guests. We'll see you next week, 7 p.m. UK time, Abu, 8 p.m. UTC, where Abu will go through. Please
wait. 8 p.m. UTC next week.
Yeah, 8 p.m. UTC is 7 p.m. UK time.
Also,
okay,
Rob, didn't you say that you actually...
What? It's 7
Rob,
p.m. UK time next week. That's important. If I have the UK time, I can figure it out.
7 p.m. UK time next week, same time, 7 p.m. UK time, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and Rob, did you say earlier you mentioned that you actually had the incest question in Speaker's Corner? Is there a video of it?
Yeah, it's on my channel. Go and have a look at it there.
What's it called?
I don't know, but it's about 6 months old. Some playground type Muslim approached me, and we were originally talking about cosmology, and then his go-to question is, me as an atheist, do I say that incest is wrong? And I said, I can't say incest is wrong unless there's some reason. And he
So you
found that.
mentioned the huge numbers of Islamic incest.
No. I mean, it's not a question I'd had before, so I didn't have any information to hand. But his question was directed at me, and you could just see it's sort of he's not somebody I'd debate again. He's got a schoolboy's brain in a man's body, and so it's a pain, and not somebody I'd speak to again. It's just no value there. But yeah, it's on the channel there somewhere, and of course.
Well, at least now you know that you can actually turn it around on them.
Yeah, probably could. I mean, I didn't have any information. It's not something I've considered. It was the first time that question had ever been asked of me. And so I was just thinking about it on the spot and going, well, if there's scientific evidence that shows, but of course he made it quite clear that it was between consenting same-sex adults to avoid the biological thing. And I said, well, in my view, I can't see anything wrong. If there's something wrong, then, and we can demonstrate it. I didn't use these words, but basically my thought process was, if there's something scientifically that shows that it's whether it's psychological or anything else, then I could say it's wrong. Otherwise, I'm not in a position to say that's wrong if those people suggest that they are flourishing from that. Just because you say it or I don't like it, it's not something I would do, and I find it personally quite repulsive. But just because I find something subjectively repulsive doesn't mean I should prevent other people unless there's some good reason apart from my subjective views. So yeah, there's a video about it.
If it harms none, do what you will.
Anyway, we can always talk about that again. If somebody brings some information that goes, hey, here's psychological, we've done a test across, even though people who commit incest say that they love doing it and they feel like they're flourishing, but we can show scientifically that they're not, I'm happy to go with that. So I don't hang my hat on what I said before, but without other information, if I'm consistent with my beliefs and what I view about the world, who am I to say that that's wrong? Just because I find it repulsive myself doesn't mean I can say to other people it's wrong unless I've got a good reason. And science would be a good reason to say that if there was something like that.
There's actually a phenomenon of, because usually our aversion to incest, it comes from growing up with certain people. You don't even have to be genetically related. I mean, like foster siblings, adopted siblings, if they're raised together, they have that exact same revulsion towards the idea of doing it themselves. But apparently there's actually a phenomenon where if you actually meet later in life, if you're a brother and sister or a father and daughter or a mother and son, apparently if you meet as adults, there's an intense sexual attraction. There's even a name for it. I can't remember the name. I think it's... I could look it up now if you wanted, but apparently it's an actual phenomenon where you meet as adults and there's just this intense attraction.
We could talk more about it next week. I think we've got to the end, but yeah, I'm happy to chat more about it. I can change my view tomorrow. I just need a good reason, and my personal opinion or a 1400-year-old book is not a good reason to me. So if there is good reasons presented, I will change my view. It's not a problem.
Well, okay. Then you will.
So is that the end of the show?
All right.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy, and we will see you again next Friday, 7 p.m. UK time.
Cheers.
Good night.
Cheers.